The fourth U.S.-India Energy Partnership Summit took place at the Marriott at Metro Center in Washington, D.C. on May 13th and 14th. It was jointly organized by the Energy and Resources Institute North America and Yale University. Indian Union Cabinet Ministers Dr. Farooq Abdullah and Dr. M.M. Pallam Raju were the guests of honor, where former Vice President Al Gore gave the Eve of Hope address.
India is of course, an absolutely crucial player in solving this crisis that we face. Only a little over 150 years ago, the first oil well was drilled and coal was already in use, but in the last century and a half, and particularly in the last half century, and even more particularly in the last few decades, with the rise of the emerging economies, we have seen an orgy of global warming pollution. We put another 90 million tons into the very thin shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet every 24 hours. It's an astonishing amount. And the cumulative man-made global warming pollution that we have left there, according to the distinguished climate scientist Jim Hansen and his colleagues, now traps enough extra energy to equal the amount of heat energy released by 400,000 Hiroshima-scale atomic bombs going off every 24 hours. It's a big planet on which we live, but that is a lot of energy, and it's having very destructive consequences. When will we awake from this dream? When? Most investment models look at numbers, and the quarterly reports and the other numbers that come over the Bloomberg screens. Well, you probably know what comes over my screen. I'm sorry, that was a really cheap shot. That was not funny at all. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. It was a joke. But the numbers that come over the Bloomberg screens, by and large, are focused on short-term economic performance. Let me give you an example. We were invested in British Petroleum, or BP, when we started. Lord Brown was an advocate of sustainability, had done a good job. They made some major acquisitions in the US, and we began to see some problems. There was a refinery fire in Texas. There was a pipeline accident in Alaska. And our team, it's not just, it's a unified team now, said, what's going on? And we looked at the safety culture and found that it had not been pushed into the American acquisitions. So we got out of BP before the Deepwater Horizon. Now, there were a lot of investors who looked at the traditional economic metrics, and they were taken completely by unpleasant surprise when the Deepwater Horizon knocked all that value off of their stock. And I'm not patting ourselves on the back. I'm just saying that if you take sustainability factors into account, you are going to do a better job for your investors. And companies that care about their employees, that care about the communities where they operate, that care about the environment, that have ethics manifested in the executive suites over time, are going to do better. We compensate ourselves on a long-term basis, 3 years, which is not really long-term, but compared to quarterly or annually, it's longer term. We believe in the alignment of incentives. We look for let me finish with just one brief analogy. When all of us were in school, we learned about the electromagnetic spectrum. Bear with me. A long rectangle, usually, with a narrow band of visible light near the middle, and the radio waves and gamma rays and ultraviolet, all that stuff. But the amount that we could see with our eyes is just a very tiny portion of the whole. For the 8 years I worked in the White House, I started every morning with a long briefing with the CIA that collected information from all parts of that spectrum, trust me. And the picture was much more complete. Now here's the analogy. If you look at the value being created by companies or in an economy, we focus normally on a very narrow slice, but the rest of it is still there. And if you take all those sustainability factors into account, you can get a fuller and more realistic image.